Well, it's Wednesday morning, the day after the elections around the country. I should congratulate all the candidates. But more importantly, from my point of view and for my family who's been listening to my rants for the last 10 to 15 years, it was the young people who came out and made their choice. And you know what? It's their future, it's their choice, and they made it. And my generation, in my personal opinion, we've been 20 years without any new ideas. It, we need to move aside. And I may disagree with some of these people, I may disagree with some of their ideas, but you know what? It's their future. And I applaud them for finally stepping up and choosing their people to lead us into the future, whatever that future may be. So, congratulations. All right. Now, we've been going through this first brands thing for a while now. And I want to talk about it because, as everyone knows on this channel, I constantly have said that we do not understand the leverage that this system, our financial system, is under. And the other thing is, we do not literally understand the interconnectedness of this. Okay. It's unbelievable. All right. So, when something happens, we have to pay attention. Now, if you follow this channel, you know how I follow it. I look for stress in the system, all right? Because stress tells us what to look at. And we have all kinds of high signs out there saying there may be stress in the system. So with First Brands, we sit there and we say, hey, what's the deal here? Is this big enough? Well, let's go through the numbers. So First Brands, it seems that people have settled on around 12 billion in losses. Now, I want to point out something to you here. The CS Credit Suisse situation with Greensill and Huang was less than $12 billion. And the people received 90% of their money back from these fake invoice lending things. Okay? Sound familiar? And the reason they got 90% was because CS didn't go out of business. They were still in business and they paid all their customers back up to 90% because they didn't want to lose them as customers. So that's what happened. But as we all know, First Brands is bankrupt. And then yesterday, First Brands, the corporation, sued their ex-CEO saying he committed fraud on them. So this is going to be a mess. I don't know how it's going to work out. All right. But we go $12 billion. And think about the size of our markets. We get about 38 trillion in government debt. We got 30 trillion in regular debt. And the stock market is around $55 billion. So you can add that up, $130 trillion. So 12 billion, you go, what's the big deal? Okay. Well, here's the big deal. The big deal is that private credit has really taken off since around 2013 until 2020 when it kind of slowed down. It's getting bigger, but it's a big market. And you can see here they say it's approximately 3 trillion and it's grown 2 trillion from 2 trillion in 2020 and they estimate it to be 5 trillion by 2029. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. All right. Now, private credit, I don't think there's anybody in the industry, in particular in private credit, who does not say and believe that private credit is absolutely, totally, 100% lying about all the pricing on all their positions. Okay, it's not even up for discussion. They've been lying to us, and they went down to the Federal Fifth in New Orleans and had the judge declare that they don't have to tell us what the valuations are. Okay, that's how bad it is. All right. So then you say, okay, so First Brands is 12 billion. What's the big deal? Well, in the private credit arena, there's around 3,000 CUSIP names. That's what we say. Names, CUSIPs, meaning separate issues. All right. And you can see that this includes direct loans, syndicated loans, collateralized loans, CLOs. Remember that one? All right. And so these are there's 3,000 names. And out of these 3,000, there are many that are 500 million and several that are over $1 billion in size. So you say, what's the big deal, Danny? Well, look, the day that First Brands declared bankruptcy, and we had the sheet before, I didn't bring it up there, the pricing from about 30, if I remember, 20 to 30 was between 94 and a half cents and 101 and a half cents. Okay. And the next day they were worth 12 cents. Today it's worth basically like 2 cents. All right. There is no market anymore for this. So here's the question that we have to ask. What is going on at all the financial firms in the world right now as we speak, and has been going on since this happened with First Brand? Well, there's a major repricing going on. So, and you have to look at it from multiple different ways, okay? One, the banks lent money to these people to buy the private equity, and they lent them 100 cents on the dollar. No haircuts. Well, guess what? Haircuts are back. And these are big. They really affect the capital, all right? Which then affects the pricing of all this stuff. Then the next thing you have is the actual pricing of those 3,000 Q-subs, okay? So if everyone was basically 94 cents to par, so let's say 98 cents, okay, on all their issues, because remember, the Fifth Court in New Orleans said it's fine. You can lie to your customers, all right? You don't have to tell them what the real value of your issues are, okay? So here's the question. There's $3 trillion out there. 3 trillion, all right? So what's it down? Is it down 10%? 20? 30? 40? They've been lying to us since 2013. Where is the real price of these 3,000 Q-sub? So think about it. If it's 10%, which would be a miracle, you're talking $300 billion. If it's 20, it's $600 billion. And if it's 30%, which I think is basically right, we're talking almost $1 trillion. So where does this $1 trillion go? It goes back to our banks. Our banks gave them $1.5 trillion because the government said, SEC says, you can't invest in that crap, but you can give it to somebody else to invest in that crap, but it's your money, okay? So then how does that come back and haunt us in interconnectedness? Well, we all seen this chart forever, right? And by the way, I'm not picking on this chart. Remember these are HTM portfolios, held to maturities portfolios. And so they've been around since March of 2009. They have not caused any problems. But I want you to think about what's going on here. And you can see the blue is bad, whatever that is, kind of like the goldish brown is the good part. So in other words, this is how much of the discount is, which we know is around $400 billion. Now, here's the deal. The bank has the bond on their balance sheet. And let's say it's down 50%. So they have $100 million and it's worth $50 million, but they name it an HTM portfolio, and the government says they can hold it on their balance sheet at 100, okay? Now, the bank is leveraged between 15 and 20 times. So think of this. What do they base it off? Do they base it off the 50 where it's actually priced? Or do they base the 15 and 20 off the 100, which is a fake price, but the government says you can do it because of FASB 157? Yeah, you got it right. They base it off of the 100. So what is their true leverage? But that's not what bothers us. If they lent $50 million, a small bank lends $50 million to a private equity fund, the $50 million, poof, gone, okay? Now here's the issue. They're sitting there saying my capital base is X amount of dollars when it actually isn't. So when the $50 million disappears, then they have to start selling their capital so that they can pay interest and pay back people their money. And that's when they declare bankruptcy. So I'm not going to go through this, but I think you should stop and follow along what goes on. They do one transaction and then they show us, you, me, financial engineering at its finest, okay? And that's all this is financial engineering. And remember, this is based off of one transaction. So look at all these things. All the insurance companies buy these things, the pension fund, everyone owns this stuff. So when we say it was only $12 billion, I would say it's 12 billion to 1 trillion. What do you think? Like and follow, tell me in the comments.